Hi all. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. My name is Amira, and today I am going to talk about how to pick the right Pat McGrath Mothership palette for you. Now, I own all of the motherships except for number 9, which is the last one that was released, which is Utopian Dreams. I opted to pass on that. I might eventually pick it up. I've been back and forth about that palette for basically since it came out. I told myself that I really didn't need it, and I still kind of feel that way. Although when I see people make looks with it, I'm like, dang, I kind of like it. It's kind of pretty. We'll see. But I own all the other Mothership palettes, so I feel like I can give you a good idea about the color story and the usability and the wearability of the majority of the Mothership collection. So I would say the first thing to ask yourself or to decide on what your expectations for the palette are. Are you purchasing the Mothership palette to be a special occasion palette, or are you purchasing the Mothership to be something that you can use on a fairly regular basis? I asked this question because it's something that I struggled with when I was deciding on what to purchase. I was very much all about wanting to find one that was like the perfect color story that I could get a ton of use out of, because the price point at $125 is a lot of money. And I wanted to make sure that I was picking something that I would get my money's worth out of. And now I don't disagree with that way of thinking. I think that if, again, $125 is a lot of money. And so if that is your train of thought, your thought process for it, that is something that is perfectly valid and understandable. For me personally, I would not take that approach now, but that's me. And I'll tell you why a little bit later on when I talk about my first Mothership. But I would say decide what you're looking for as far as the expectations of use of the palette. If you're looking for something that's fancy and like amazing, and you just want to pull it out for like New Year's Eve and birthdays and things like that, there are palettes that I think are perfect for that. I think your Decadence is a perfect palette for that. I would even say Subliminal is a perfect palette for that. Personally, I probably would go, if I was going for like the party palette, I would probably go for Decadence because of the fact that it's all metallics. It's got a ton of shade options. The textures are actually quite versatile, so you can use it on its own, even though it's all metallics. It's what scared me off, is that I didn't think that it was a palette that was usable all on its own, but it is. So you can create a full look just using that palette with no problems. So for me, a party palette, if I was choosing a party palette, I would probably choose Decadence. It's in the name, Decadence. So everyday palette, it all depends on what your color vibe is. Because the thing about Pat McGrath palettes, and Mothership palettes specifically, is that I think a lot of people find them quite intimidating. I was one of those people. I have had people comment that they own palettes from Pat, and then they've never used them, Mothership palettes specifically. They've never used them because they're just kind of intimidated by the whole color story and they don't know where to start. And the one thing I would say is they're far more usable and user-friendly than they look. Her color stories can often feel very all over the place. I'm sure I'm not the first time I saw one of her palettes, I was like, what? But they're not. There is a method to the madness. There is I would even dare I say system, but not really, because I don't feel like there are rules that have to be followed to use a Mothership. But when I look at them now, having used them for so long and having used so many of them, I see what her thought process is behind them. And the great thing about them is you can cut them up. And when I say cut them up, you can divide them into The first, I would say, 7 shades, 6 shades are shades that you can use pretty much every day. You have her special shades, which are the 4 shades at the end of the palette. These shades at the front are the shades that are used to build the look. So you use that as those shades as your foundation, and you use the last 4 shades to complement and to, or to how do I put it, to liven up, to make special, hence why they're called special shades. That's what that's for. Those are to elevate the look, is the word I was looking for, elevate the look. But you can stick with those shades at the front of the palette and never touch those until you're ready and you want to use those for, a special occasion. You can stick with the shades, those first few shades, and create an entirely cohesive, complete look, never veering into the glittery special shades at all. And when you're ready, you can then use those shades as your foundation, your base. Go from there and build around your special shades. And that is the thought process that Pat has employed in her palettes. And once you realize that that's really the vibe, you kind of get the point of the color. You kind of get the point of the layouts and the color stories themselves. It's all meant to sort of use those special shades as the elevation ornamental shades. You don't have to incorporate those in every look. You can do a very cohesive look with just these shades. And not only that, a lot of those shades in that side are satin formula. Not just matte, but satin. And her satins and even her metallics, not all of them, but a lot of her metallics, like the ones in Decadence, are metallics that are soft so that they can be blended out. And when you blend them out, they just look like satin mattes. So not only do you get these foundational shades, but you get these foundational shades that can be quite versatile in how you use them on their own. So you can take a metallic and blend it out and it look like a soft satin. You can take a matte and put your special shade over it, or you can take that metallic and put a special shade over it, or you can leave the special shades out of it completely. Her palettes are actually quite usable once you understand the layout. And that's why I say I don't really adhere to the, is a palette an everyday palette or is it a special palette? That's why I don't really adhere to that, because once I understood what her thought process was behind the layout of the motherships, I realized that pretty much all of them can be everyday palettes. Literally, every single one of them. So once you realize that, and again, it's all about what you're looking for as far as your color story, your aesthetic, are you looking for a deeper, richer palette, kind of like Sublime, which is very like, you've got that rich gold and that rich green and you've got a black. That is a more dramatic palette overall, just in general. Overall, that palette is more dramatic, but it still has lighter, softer shades. So maybe you're someone who you like a lot of eye definition and you like a bit of color, but you like jewel toned shades, you like a green, a rich jewel toned green and a rich gold. Maybe Sublime is the one for you. Or maybe you're someone who you really love, cool tone neutrals, but you want something every now and then to just jazz them up. Subliminal is probably the one for you. So that's what I mean, is that they can go, you can use that line of, that line of thinking of everyday versus special occasion, but you don't have to. You don't have to hold yourself to that rule with any of the palettes. And as far as intimidation, again, like I said, once I realized the breakdown of them, it just made it so much easier for me, and it's far less intimidating. I say if you are intimidated, take that process that I just laid out for you, but also stick with 1 to 2 to 3 shades when you do a look the first time you use a mothership. Don't feel like you have to go in there and be like, I've got to go hard with this palette. I've really got to. No, you're just going to freak yourself out. You are. So just sit down, pick 1 or 2, maybe 3 shades to play with, and just sit down and play with those shades and see how you feel and get a feel for the formula. Her formula is very In my opinion, it's actually quite user-friendly. I was shocked by that. I assumed, my brain at the time, you know, being sort of a makeup semi-newbie, semi-novice, was that because it was a makeup artist's brand and product, that it was going to be hard to use, that it was going to be something that there was going to be a really long learning curve. And what I found was that it was quite the opposite. And then I thought about it for a minute and I was like, that actually makes perfect sense, because Pat McGrath got her start, you know, really doing runway makeup. And she doesn't have a lot of time to sit there and blend an eye look for 20 minutes. She's got to do 10, 15 models, one after the other. No one has time for that. So she's created shadows that are very blendable, but pigmented. Very easy to use. I would say if you have synthetic brushes, they work, but getting a natural hair brush, trying her palettes with a natural hair brush, for me was a game changer, because it picks up a lot of product. A natural hair brush picks up a lot of product, and you don't have to dip in. So I would just dip in once, go in, and then I'm solid. One tap, done. So that's just a little tip that I have about that. I would also say that I would choose a different mothership, and I'm just looking at my list here of things that I've thought of since starting to purchase motherships. Is I would choose a different mothership. As far as if I was picking one today, my first mothership, by the way, was Divine Rose, which is a beautiful palette, and I purchased that palette with the same thinking that a lot of people have of, I need something that's every day and that I can use all the time. And when I first got that palette, I used it a ton, and it is a great everyday palette. Again, I say if you are looking for a color story that is not intimidating, if you are intimidated by Pat McGrath palettes, Divine Rose is a great, unintimidating color story. To me, it is the least intimidating of all of her color stories. It's cool tone, mauve tones. They're beautiful. I think Veloria, that mauve cool tone matte, is like one of the best matte mauves I've ever used in my entire life. It is chef's kiss perfection. And it has those shades that can elevate the look, but they're not those, it's nothing that's gonna be too overwhelming if you are not used to using those types of shades, that type of formula, or if you're just, you know, again, intimidated by the whole idea of a mothership in the first place. That is why I purchased Divine Rose, and that is perfectly valid. So if you're still feeling like, I don't know, girl, I don't know, sis, I want one, I like all of them, but I don't know which one to pick because they're so intimidating. Divine Rose is a great entry-level mothership. It really is. And it's a good everyday palette. But after having purchased it, and I used it for like a good solid month and a half, like practically every day, I was just using it. And I was really impressed with the formula. I found myself thinking, you know, I could have gotten one of the other ones and I think I would have ultimately been okay with just having one of the other ones. Nothing wrong with Divine Rose at all. I love that palette. It's a beautiful palette. But I think if I were doing it today, I would probably pick Subliminal. It's my favorite mothership. Anyway, it's ranked. I have a Pat McGrath ranking. I will put a card up or put it in, you know, I have a Pat McGrath playlist as well. So I will pop those somewhere, either a card or at the end of the video or in the description, somewhere like that. But I would pick Subliminal because the thing that I think probably was originally intimidating me is that blue. And I can do a look with that palette and never touch the blue if I don't want to. Again, because the way the palettes are laid out. But I would have had that blue to play with. And I think it would have been a really like fun first introductory palette. So it is the first mothership. And if I were purchasing again, it would be the first mothership I would have purchased instead of Divine Rose. I think Divine Rose would probably now be the last one that I would purchase, which sounds crazy. It's not last on my ranking. I own Subversive, which is the last in my ranking, spoiler alert. But that's mostly just because of Color Story. And I think that for me, I've been a Pat McGrath completionist for years. And once I started buying motherships, I wanted all the motherships. And I purchased that one not really thinking about the fact that it was probably not going to get much, I wasn't going to get much use out of it. So I think now I probably wouldn't purchase that one at all. But I think as far as the ones that I've purchased that I know that I really enjoy using, I would probably say Divine Rose is the one that I would purchase last, ironically now. Because I feel like with Pat, you have to have a little bit of adventurous spirit when you purchase a mothership. Because again, even though there's a system to using them, they're meant to be fun, they're meant to be artistic, they're meant to be experimented with, and you can do all of those things with every single one of them, but you have to be willing to play. And I think for $125, people, I can understand, are like, sis, that's a lot of money to be playing. I want something that I know, I know. But I think once you understand, again, her little system, her layout system, and also you understand that the formulas are consistent. The formulation is consistent throughout all of the motherships. I've tried all except one. The formulas are consistent. So I don't have this feeling of like guessing which one will be good or bad when I'm using them. They're all the same. It's a great formula. They're all the same. So once I've gotten sort of past that idea that like, then you can play, you can really sit down and have fun and have a fun makeup session. And that's the spirit I'm coming from now, having purchased so many. I'm not as cautious about it. So again, I'm sure if you were like me and you were purchasing Mothership, thinking of purchasing a Mothership, I can't talk, I've said Mothership so many times, Mothership, I watched a ton of videos. I watched a ton of tutorials and reviews, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't know. Just pick the one that you like the most. Don't overthink it. Pick the color story that makes your heart sing. Even if it's a color story that you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get a lot of use out of this, just buy it. Buy that one. Because I think sometimes we overthink things, especially, again, with the price point, I can understand that. But just go with the one that makes your heart sing. And let the chips fall where they may, because I'm telling you, you're going to get more use out of it than you realize. Once you sit down, but you have to sit down. Like, I know so many people who buy motherships and then they're scared and they're like, I don't use it. And it's like, that's because you're scared to use it. It's makeup. This is the first thing I'll say about anything. And I was this way when I was first getting into makeup and I was really scared to try certain things. It's makeup. It washes off. Take a moment, take an afternoon, a Saturday, a Sunday afternoon, whenever you're not busy. Pick the mothership that you want. And then when you get it, sit down and just play. And figure out how to make it work for your needs. That's ultimately my advice for picking the right mothership. Pick the one that makes your heart sing, the colors that get you going, that make you excited, because I guarantee you with the wearability and the usability of the palette, you can get it to work for more than just playtime. You can get it to work for more than just special occasion. You can get it to work for every day because it's meant to be used that way anyway. She's made a palette with all of the palettes that have shades that are wearable. And then she has the shades that are the fun shades. And you can mix and match. You can use them separately. I have used special shades on their own and just patted them all over my lid and been done. And it looked amazing. I've done looks where I've never touched the special shades. Love the look. It was amazing. I've done looks where I've just tapped into one of the satins or one of the mattes and one of the metallics and blended that all over my eye and just used that shade and it looked amazing. They're far more usable than you would think they are. They're not just ornamental. They're beautiful palettes. I mean, a mothership is stunning to have in your possession. They're beautiful palettes. They're heavy, they're solid, they are substantial, they're meaty. You get your money's worth all around, But ultimately they are makeup. It is makeup and you can use it and you shouldn't be afraid of it. So after saying all of this, my advice for picking the right mothership is to pick the one you like the best and have fun with it, because I guarantee you it will work out for you no matter what. That's my advice. All right, guys, if this video was helpful at all, I mean, it was a bit rambly. I had a couple of notes that I written down that I wanted to touch on, but I really just wanted to chat. I really just wanted to say what was on my mind, and how I came to, understand motherships and how I use my motherships today. If you found this video to be helpful, please be sure to like the video. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.